The silence spread across the galaxy like ink spreading through water. Slow at first, then faster, until nothing could escape it. High Arbiter Thiessen stood on the command deck of his flagship and watched his empire crumble. Around him, officers ran back and forth, shouting orders that no one could hear. Their communication systems were dead. Their sensors showed nothing but static. The great fleet of the Conclave, 12,000 warships strong, had become 12,000 isolated islands floating in an ocean of nothing. "Get me a connection to the other ships," Thiessen ordered. His voice was calm, but his four hands were trembling. Any connection, light signals, physical couriers, anything. His officers tried. They failed. The silence was not just blocking their electronic communications. It was blocking everything. Light signals disappeared into the void. Ships that flew close enough to touch could not hear each other. It was as if the universe itself had forgotten how to carry sound. Thiessen was old. He had lived for 3,000 years and seen countless species rise and fall. He had watched empires born and empires die. He thought he understood how the universe worked, thought he was wrong. Far away, on a small moon in the outer edges of Earth's solar system, Grace Coleman opened her eyes. She was lying on the cold metal floor of an escape pod. The last thing she remembered was the silence washing over the meridian, and then everything had gone dark. Daniel Price was beside her, groaning as he sat up. His face was pale, but he was alive. What happened? He asked. Grace looked at her hands. They were still glowing, faint and soft like starlight trapped under skin. "I do not know," she admitted, "but I think we survived." She stood up and walked to the small window of the escape pod. Outside, she could see the stars. They looked different somehow. Brighter, closer, as if she could reach out and touch them. And in the distance, she could see the Conclave fleet. 12,000 ships floating in complete silence, utterly helpless. "They cannot communicate," Price said, looking over her shoulder. "Without their networks, they cannot coordinate. They are just sitting there." Grace nodded. Whatever Shaw did, it worked. But at what cost? On Earth, Benjamin Shaw stood in the center of his laboratory. But it was not really a laboratory anymore. The walls were gone. The ceiling was gone. Everything solid had dissolved into light and music and pure, beautiful energy. Linda floated beside him, her body transforming just like his. She should have been afraid, but she was not. She felt more peaceful than she had ever felt in her entire life. "Is this death?" she asked. Ben smiled and took her hand. Even though neither of them had physical hands anymore, somehow they could still touch. "No," he said. "This is not death. This is something else. Something better." All around them, billions of human beings were going through the same transformation. Their bodies were dissolving, but their minds remained. Their consciousness remained. Everything that made them human was being preserved, but in a new form. They were becoming something that existed in the spaces between atoms. Something that lived in the music of the universe itself. Something eternal. "I understand now," Ben said. The substrate frequency was not just a discovery. It was an invitation. The universe was waiting for someone to find it. Waiting for someone brave enough to change. Linda squeezed his hand. "And we were the ones who found it. We were the ones who were willing to become something new." The transformation spread across Earth in seconds. Every city, every town, every village. 12 billion people, all becoming light, all becoming music, all becoming part of something greater than themselves. And as they transformed, the silence they had created grew stronger. It spread further. It touched more stars, more planets, more species. High Arbiter Thiessen watched his homeworld disappear into the silence. He screamed, but no one could hear him. He tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The silence was everywhere now, touching everything, changing everything. One by one, the species of the conclave found themselves isolated. 12,000 years of careful political networks collapsed in hours. Alliances that had lasted centuries fell apart in minutes. The great machine of galactic civilization, built over 100,000 years, ground to a halt. Some species tried to fight the silence. They built new communication systems, new technologies, new ways of talking to each other. But nothing worked. The silence was not just a lack of sound. It was a fundamental change in the nature of reality itself. Back on the small moon, Grace Coleman felt something strange happening inside her. The glow in her hands was spreading, moving up her arms, filling her entire body. She should have been terrified, but instead she felt calm. Peaceful, almost happy. "Admiral," Price said. His voice sounded far away. "I think something is happening to us." Grace looked at him. He was glowing too, his body becoming transparent, becoming light. She could see right through him to the stars beyond. "I know," she said. "I think this is what Shaw meant. Nothing will ever be the same. Double quotes. She thought about her life. All the battles she had fought, all the friends she had lost, all the years she had spent trying to protect humanity from a galaxy that did not want them to exist. Now humanity was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that could not be fought, could not be conquered, could not be stopped. "Are we dying?" Price asked. Grace thought about the question. Her body was disappearing. Her physical form was dissolving into pure energy. By any normal definition, yes, they were dying. But she did not feel dead. She felt more alive than she had ever felt in her entire life. "No," she said finally. "We are not dying. We are waking up." The last thing she saw, before her eyes became light, was the conclave fleet. 12,000 ships floating in silence, watching helplessly as humanity transformed into something beyond their understanding. The galaxy had tried to silence humanity forever. Instead, humanity had become the silence itself, and in that silence, they found freedom. The galaxy was a busy place. Thousands of species talked to each other across the stars. They sent messages through space, traded goods, made alliances, and fought wars. For over 100,000 years, the Conclave of 12 had ruled everything. 12 ancient species, each one powerful beyond measure, had joined together to control all of known space. They thought they knew everything. They thought nothing could surprise them any more. Then humanity arrived. Humans had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. In the grand timeline of the galaxy, this was nothing. A blink of an eye. A single breath. The Conclave looked at humans, the way an adult looks at a noisy child running through a quiet room. But what a noisy child humanity was, from the moment humans figured out radio waves. They had been broadcasting into space. Music, television shows, phone calls, internet signals. All of it spilled out into the void like water from a broken pipe. The galaxy had never heard anything so loud, so constant, so utterly without shame. Some species found it funny. Others found it annoying. The Conclave found it concerning. Admiral Grace Coleman stood on the bridge of the Starship Meridian and watched the stars pass by. She was 57 years old, with short gray hair and a face marked by years of hard service. She had fought in 3 wars, commanded dozens of missions, and buried more friends than she cared to count. Nothing surprised her anymore. Or so she thought. Her second-in-command, Daniel Price, walked up beside her. He was younger, maybe 35, with brown hair and worried eyes. He held a datapad in his hands, and Grace could tell from his expression that the news was not good. "The Conclave is making demands again," he said. "They want us to pull our colony ships out of the Kepler expanse." Grace did not turn from the window. What reason did they give this time? The usual. They say we are expanding too fast. They say we are disrupting the natural order. They say we need to learn our place. Grace finally turned to look at him. Our place, she repeated. The words tasted bitter in her mouth. And where exactly do they think our place is? Price did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew what the conclave really wanted. They wanted humanity to stay small. Stay quiet. Stay afraid. They wanted humans to bow down and accept that they would never be equals in this galaxy. Grace thought about the 3 colony ships that had gone missing last month. The conclave claimed to know nothing about it. But Grace had seen the intelligence reports. She knew the truth. The conclave was not just making demands. They were making plans far away from the meridian on a small planet called Earth. A man named Benjamin Shaw was working late in his laboratory. The lab was a mess. Papers covered every surface. Empty coffee cups formed small towers on his desk. Computer screens glowed with numbers and equations that would make no sense to anyone but him. Ben was a physicist. He studied the smallest things in the universe, the tiny particles that made up everything else. Most people found his work boring. His wife, Linda, often joked that listening to him talk about quantum mechanics was better than any sleeping pill. But tonight, Ben was not bored. Tonight, Ben was terrified. He had found something. Something that should not exist. Something that changed everything he thought he knew about reality. Deep beneath the fabric of space and time, there was a frequency, a vibration, a sound that was not really a sound at all. It was more like the echo of the universe itself, the heartbeat of creation, the first note of a song that had been playing since the beginning of time. Ben called it the substrate frequency. He had spent 3 years looking for it, and now that he had found it, he did not know what to do. His phone rang. It was Linda. Ben, it is almost midnight. Are you coming home? He looked at his screens, at the impossible numbers, at the discovery that could change human history. I found it, he said. His voice was shaking. Linda, I actually found it. There was a pause on the other end. Linda was used to her husband's excitement. He got excited about a lot of things. But something in his voice was different tonight. Found what? She asked. Everything, Ben whispered. I found the voice of God. Linda did not understand what he meant. She would not understand for a long time. But she knew her husband well enough to know that this was not one of his usual discoveries. This was something bigger. Something that scared him. Come home, she said softly. We can talk about it tomorrow. Ben nodded, even though she could not see him. Okay, he said. Okay, I am coming home. He turned off his screens and gathered his notes. As he walked out of the lab, he did not know that in 3 months, the conclave would send 12,000 warships to destroy Earth. He did not know that his discovery would be the only thing standing between humanity and total extinction. All he knew was that he had found something important, something dangerous, something that whispered to him in the quiet moments, telling him secrets about the nature of reality itself. Back on the Meridian, Grace Coleman received another message from Earth Command. The news was getting worse. More ships were going missing. More colonies were reporting strange activity near their borders. The conclave was tightening its grip on the galaxy, and humanity was caught in the middle. Grace looked out at the stars and made a decision. She would not wait for the conclave to make the first move. She would find out what they were planning, and she would stop them. She did not know that it was already too late. The conclave had made their decision months ago. Humanity was too loud, too fast, too unpredictable. The 12 ancient species had ruled the galaxy for 100,000 years, and they did not intend to share their power with anyone, especially not with a species that had only been traveling among the stars for 50 years. The war was coming, and when it arrived, Nothing would ever be the same again. In his small house in New Mexico, Benjamin Shaw lay awake next to his sleeping wife. He stared at the ceiling and listened to the silence of the night. But it was not really silent. Not anymore. Now he could hear it. The frequency beneath everything. The song of the universe itself. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. And somehow, he knew that it was waiting for him. Waiting for humanity. The stars outside his window twinkled peacefully. They had no idea what was coming. None of them did. 3 months passed like water through fingers. Fast, quiet, unstoppable. Grace Coleman was eating breakfast in her quarters when the alarm started screaming. She dropped her fork and ran to the bridge, her heart pounding in her chest. She had heard that alarm before. It meant something very bad was happening. Daniel Price was already there, his face pale as paper. He turned to her with eyes full of fear. "Admiral," he said, "you need to see this." The main screen showed a view of space near Earth's solar system. At first, Grace did not understand what she was looking at. The stars looked wrong. Darker somehow. Blocked. Then she realized what she was seeing. Ships. Thousands of ships. More ships than she had ever seen in her entire life. They filled the space between stars like a swarm of locusts, each one bristling with weapons, each one flying the colors of the conclave. "How many?" Grace asked. Her voice was calm, but inside she was screaming. 12,000 warships, Price replied. They came through hyperspace 20 minutes ago. They are heading straight for Earth. Grace felt the world tilt beneath her feet. 12,000 ships. The entire human fleet had maybe 200. They were outnumbered 60 to 1. What do they want? She asked, even though she already knew the answer. Price handed her a datapad. On it was a message from the conclave, broadcast on all frequencies so that every human in the galaxy could hear it. Attention. Species designation human. Your expansion has been deemed a threat to galactic stability. You will surrender unconditionally within 6 hours. If you do not surrender, your homeworld will be destroyed. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. This is your only warning. Grace read the message twice. Then she handed the pad back to Price and walked to the window. Outside, the stars looked so peaceful. So quiet. It was hard to believe that somewhere out there, 12,000 ships were coming to kill everyone she had ever known. 6 hours, she said. Not enough time to evacuate. Not enough time to fight. What do we do? Price asked. Grace did not answer. She did not have an answer. On Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People ran through the streets, screaming and crying. Families hugged each other and said goodbye. Churches filled with people praying for a miracle. Leaders gave speeches about courage and sacrifice. But everyone knew the truth. Humanity was going to die. Benjamin Shaw watched the chaos from his laboratory window. Linda stood beside him, her hand gripping his arm so tight it hurt. They had been married for 20 years, and in all that time, he had never seen her cry. She was crying now. Is there nothing we can do? She asked. Ben thought about his discovery. The substrate frequency. The voice of the universe. For 3 months, he had been studying it, learning its secrets, understanding its power. He knew things now that no human had ever known before. He knew that reality was not solid. It was more like music. Everything that existed was just a pattern of vibrations, a song sung by the universe itself. And if you knew the right frequency, you could change the song. You could change everything. There might be something, he said slowly, but I do not know if it will work. And even if it does work, nothing will ever be the same. Linda looked at him with red eyes. Ben, in 6 hours nothing will exist at all. Whatever you can do, do it. Ben nodded. He walked to his computer and began typing. His fingers moved faster than they had ever moved before. He was not just writing code. He was composing a symphony. 3 hours later, he contacted the Meridian. Admiral Grace Coleman was standing on her bridge, watching the Conclave fleet grow closer when Benjamin Shaw's face appeared on her screen. He looked terrible. His hair was wild, his eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were shaking. "Admiral Coleman," he said, "I need your help." Grace almost laughed. "Dr. Shaw, I do not think there is anything anyone can do to help us now." "There is," Ben insisted. "But I need you to broadcast a signal. One signal on a specific frequency. That is all." Grace stared at him. "A signal? You want me to send a signal while 12,000 warships are coming to destroy us?" "Yes," Ben's voice cracked. "Please, trust me. I know it sounds crazy, but this is our only chance." Grace looked at Price. Price shrugged. "What do we have to lose, Admiral?" She thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. Then she made her decision. "Send me the frequency," she said. "I will broadcast it." Ben smiled. It was a sad smile, full of hope and fear and something else that Grace did not recognize. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for trusting me." The frequency arrived on Grace's console. It was the strangest thing she had ever seen. The numbers did not make sense. They seemed to shift and change, even as she looked at them, as if they were alive somehow. "Broadcast it," she ordered. The Meridian sent out a single pulse. It lasted exactly 1.7 seconds. It was not loud. It was not bright. It was just a whisper in the darkness of space. And then Earth went silent. The change was instant. Every radio signal from Earth stopped. Every transmission ceased. Every electronic communication simply vanished, as if someone had flipped a switch and turned off the entire planet. Grace stared at her screens in horror. Where Earth should have been, there was nothing. Not destruction. Not debris. Just silence. Pure, complete, absolute silence. What happened? Price whispered. What did we do? Grace did not answer. She could not answer. For the first time in her life, she had no idea what was going on. The Conclave fleet stopped. Their commanders were just as confused as Grace. Their sensors showed nothing where Earth had been. No planet. No signals. No life. Just empty space and endless quiet. Then something strange happened. The silence began to spread. It moved outward from where Earth had been, expanding like a wave in all directions. Everywhere it touched, communication stopped. Ships went dark. Sensors failed. The background noise of the universe, the hum that had always been there, simply disappeared. High Arbiter Thyssen of the Vorn Dominion, the commander of the Conclave fleet, watched his displays with growing terror. What is this? He demanded. What have the humans done? No one could answer him. No one understood. The silence kept spreading. It reached the Conclave ships and passed through them like a ghost. Their weapons still worked. Their engines still ran. But they could not talk to each other. They could not coordinate. They could not do anything except watch in horror as the wave of silence swept across the galaxy. Grace Coleman felt the silence wash over her ship. For a moment, everything went dark. Then the lights came back on, but something was different. Something had changed. She looked at her hands. They were glowing. Faint, barely visible, but definitely glowing. Admiral? Price's voice was strange, distant. What is happening to us? Grace did not know, but she was about to find out. Grace Coleman opened her eyes and saw infinity. She was standing on a plane of pure light that stretched in every direction forever. Above her, below her, all around her, there was nothing but brightness and warmth, and a soft humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere. At once, she looked down at her hands. They were not really hands anymore. They were shapes made of light, constantly shifting and changing, but somehow still recognizably hers. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice did not sound like a voice. It sounded like music. "You are everywhere," came the reply. Benjamin Shaw appeared beside her. But he was not the tired, messy scientist she had seen on her screen 3 months ago. He was something else now. Something bright and beautiful and completely at peace. "Welcome to the substrate," he said. "Welcome to the song of the universe." Grace tried to understand what he was saying. Her military training had prepared her for many things, but not for this. Not for existing as pure consciousness in a realm beyond physical reality. What happened to Earth? She asked. What happened to everyone? "They are here," Ben said. "All of them. 12 billion minds, all transformed, all preserved, all part of something greater than they ever were before." He gestured, and suddenly Grace could see them. Billions of lights floating like stars in an infinite sky. Each one was a human being. Each one was alive and aware and completely new. "We did not die," Ben continued. "We evolved. We became what the universe always wanted us to become." Grace thought about the conclave, the 12,000 ships, the war that was supposed to destroy humanity forever. "The aliens," she said. "What happened to them?" "They are still there," Ben replied. "In the physical universe. But the silence has changed everything. They cannot communicate anymore. They cannot coordinate. The great empires of the galaxy are falling apart. We did not destroy them? No, we could have. The power in the substrate is beyond anything they could imagine. We could have wiped them all out with a thought." Ben paused. "But that is not who we are. That is not what humanity should become." Grace felt something that might have been relief. Even in this strange new form, she was still herself. She still cared about doing the right thing. "So, what do we do now?" she asked. Ben smiled. "Whatever we want. We can explore the birth of stars. We can witness the death of galaxies. We can travel through time itself. We are no longer limited by bodies or ships or the speed of light." Grace looked around at the infinite plane of light. It was beautiful beyond words. It was also terrifying. "Can we ever go back?" she asked. "Can we ever be human again?" Ben's smile faded slightly. "No," he said quietly. "This change is permanent. We can never return to what we were. The physical universe will continue without us." Grace thought about that. She thought about Earth, about her home, about all the things she had left behind. For a moment, she felt a deep sadness. Then she felt something else. Linda Shaw appeared beside her husband. She was glowing like him, beautiful and transformed and utterly at peace. She reached out and took Grace's hand. "I know it is hard," Linda said. "I know you miss what we were. But look at what we have become. Look at what we can do now." She gestured, and suddenly Grace was somewhere else. She was floating above a newborn star, watching nuclear fire pour out in all directions. The heat should have destroyed her instantly, but she felt nothing but warmth and wonder. "We can be anywhere," Linda said. "We can see anything. We can touch the minds of beings who will not be born for 1,000,000 years." Grace watched the star burn. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. "What about the people back home?" she asked. "The survivors? The ones who did not transform?" "There are no survivors," Ben said gently. "Everyone on Earth transformed. Everyone in range of the signal. But there are still humans out there, on distant colonies, on ships that were too far away. They are still physical. They are still alive." Grace felt hope rise in her chest. "So humanity is not gone?" "No. Humanity continues in 2 forms now. The physical humans who survived, and us, the transformed ones. We are connected but different. Two branches of the same tree. Daniel Price appeared beside them, his form bright and steady. He looked happier than Grace had ever seen him. "Admiral," he said, "there is something you need to see." He took her hand, and suddenly they were somewhere else. They were floating in space, looking down at a small blue planet in a distant solar system. Grace recognized it immediately. It was New Hope, one of humanity's oldest colonies. On the surface, she could see cities and farms and people going about their daily lives. They had no idea what had happened to Earth. They had no idea that billions of their brothers and sisters had transformed into beings of pure light. "They are scared," Price said. "The silence has reached them too. Their communications are down. They think the Conclave has won." Grace watched the tiny humans on the planet below. They looked so fragile, so alone. "We should help them," she said. "We will," Ben replied, "but not the way you think. We cannot give them technology. We cannot fight their battles for them. That would make them dependent on us forever. Then what can we do?" Ben smiled. "We can give them hope. We can whisper in their dreams. We can plant seeds of courage in their hearts. We can show them that they are not alone in the universe." Grace thought about this. It was not the kind of help she was used to giving. She was a soldier, trained to fight with weapons and ships. But maybe that was not what humanity needed anymore. "Okay," she said finally. "Show me how." And so began Grace Coleman's new life. Not as an admiral, not as a soldier, but as a guardian. A whisper in the darkness. A light in the void. She had lost everything she knew. But she had gained something even greater, that she had gained eternity. 100,000 years passed like a single breath dot in the physical universe. Everything had changed. The Conclave of 12 was nothing more than a distant memory, a story that parents told their children about the old days when great empires ruled the stars. The 12 species that had once controlled everything were scattered now, weak and divided, struggling to survive in a galaxy that no longer obeyed their rules. The silence had never lifted. It remained like a blanket over everything, making it impossible for anyone to rebuild what had been lost. New civilizations rose and fell, but none of them ever achieved the unity the Conclave had possessed. None of them ever built another galactic empire, because they could not. The silence would not allow it. On a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, a new species was learning to walk upright. They were curious creatures with bright eyes and clever hands. They looked up at the stars at night and wondered what might be out there. They did not know about humans. They did not know about the Conclave or the great transformation that had changed everything. All they knew was that the universe was vast and mysterious and full of secrets waiting to be discovered. But sometimes, late at night, when the world was quiet and the stars were bright, they heard something. A whisper, a melody, a song that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Their elders called it the voice of the empty. Their scientists tried to measure it and failed. Their poets wrote songs about it, trying to capture its beauty in words that always fell short. It was humanity. Of course, Grace Coleman floated in the space between stars and watched the young species take their first steps toward intelligence. She had been watching them for 10,000 years, ever since they climbed down from the trees and started making tools. Daniel Price appeared beside her, his form glowing softly in the darkness of space. "They are doing well," he said. "Yes," Grace agreed. "They remind me of us when we were young. Will we help them?" Grace thought about the question. Over the past 100,000 years, she had helped many species. Not with technology or weapons, but with dreams and ideas and small moments of inspiration. She had whispered to scientists on the edge of great discoveries. She had comforted children crying in the night. She had given hope to leaders facing impossible choices. It was not the kind of help she had been trained to give, but it was the kind of help that mattered most. Yes, she said, we will help them, the same way we have helped all the others. Far away, in a realm of pure light and music, Benjamin Shaw was doing what he had done for 100,000 years. He was studying, learning, trying to understand the infinite complexity of the universe he had become part of. Linda sat beside him, if sitting was even the right word for beings who no longer had bodies. She was watching a galaxy being born, stars forming from clouds of gas, planets cooling from molten rock. Then, she said, do you ever regret it? Regret what? What you did. The transformation. Taking all of humanity away from everything they knew. Ben thought about the question. He thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green forests and all the beautiful things that no longer existed in physical form. He thought about the people who had been changed without their consent. Their bodies dissolved into light before they even understood what was happening. Sometimes, he admitted. But then I remember what the alternative was. 12,000 warships. Total destruction. Every human being in the universe, dead forever. Instead, we became something else. Yes, something that can never be destroyed. Something that will exist as long as the universe exists. Linda reached out and took his hand. Even after 100,000 years, she still loved him. Even after becoming beings of pure consciousness, they were still married. I do not regret it, she said. Not anymore. I miss my body sometimes. I miss food and sleep and the feeling of rain on my face. But I would not trade what we have become for anything. Ben smiled. Neither would I. Back near the young planet, Grace Coleman made a decision. She reached down with her thoughts and touched the mind of a small child sleeping in a cave. The child was smart and curious, the kind of person who would grow up to change their world. She gave the child a dream of stars and light and infinite possibility. A dream of a future where their species could reach beyond their small planet and touch the sky. The child would not remember the dream when they woke up, but something would stay with them. A spark of curiosity, a hunger to explore, a belief that there was more to the universe than anyone had ever imagined. It was a small gift. But small gifts, given at the right moment, could change everything. Daniel Price watched Grace work. Do you think they will find us someday? He asked. The new species? Do you think they will discover the truth about what we are? Grace considered the question. Maybe, she said. In 1,000,000 years, or 10 million, they might figure out that the whispers they hear are not just random noise. They might realize that humanity is still here, watching over them. And then what? Grace smiled. It was the same smile she had smiled 100,000 years ago, when she was just a human admiral facing impossible odds. Some things never changed. Then we will welcome them, she said. The same way we have welcomed everyone else who found their way to the truth. We will show them that they are not alone, that they were never alone. The silence that surrounded them was not empty. It was full of life and love and the endless song of 12 billion human minds. Transformed but never destroyed. The galaxy had tried to silence humanity forever. Instead, humanity had become the silence, and in that silence, they had found something greater than anyone had ever imagined. They had found each other. They had found eternity. They had found home. The stars burned on, bright and beautiful, and humanity sang their endless song. Not a song of conquest or war or power. A song of hope, a song of love, song that would echo through the universe until the very end of time. And beyond.